Hello everyone, I'm Darshan. In this video, I thought of um, sort of extend from Ravi Zacharias' argument regarding philosophical materialism. I'll share that original video in the description, um, which is that. So he was, if I briefly recap, he was asked by one of the atheists regarding free will in the atheistic worldview, and he responded with the question on the idea of free will in materialism. That is because in philosophical materialism, the function of or the consciousness is reduced to the brain activity. So one way or the other, I mean, in some of the arguments, usually they will claim that it's a deterministic process, or it could be a stochastic process, but whatever it is, it can be ultimately reduced to brain activity, and it is relative to brain activity or our genetic composition or our external experience. So ultimately it can be reduced to the subjective material existence, right, or worldly existence, which means that our consciousness cannot transcend total subjectivity, and if it cannot transcend subjectivity, we cannot make any objective claim. As humans, we are unable to make any objective claim because we are bound to subjectivity through our brain or genetic structure or our relative perceptions, right? So that was his main argument, that it creates a contradiction in the materialistic worldview, that if everything is subjective, then no one can make an objective claim, right? So I thought of maybe we can extend that same argument to neuroscience, because as I understand, in neuroscience also, at least in the mainstream neuroscience, in the studies done on consciousness, the widely held perception or widely held belief is that the consciousness is a function of the brain, or some kind of a manifestation of the brain. So if that is the case, again we come back to that original issue, that we cannot have any objective experience or objective thought. We are bound to subjectivity, and I think that can create two problems, one for neuroscience, one for the entire body of knowledge in modern science. So one issue with that claim is that if you make that as an objective claim, just like the argument that Ravi Zacharias brought up against philosophical materialism, you can claim that theory itself is a contradiction, because if it is made as an objective claim, that in neuroscience, that your consciousness is entirely reducible to the matter, then which leads to the logical conclusion that consciousness is purely subjective, right? Conscious thoughts are purely subjective, and which begs the question, so whether that original claim itself is an objective claim, because if you claim it's objective claim, then you are violating your own principle. So that contradiction, I think you can that contradiction might arise based on that conclusion that consciousness is purely a result of brain activity, right? So that claim, that theory, if it is objective theory, it cannot be objective theory based on theory itself. So that is one problem, one contradiction. The other contradiction is a more broad one, because neuroscience is part of science, and science, scientific method or philosophy of science is this endeavor to know the objective truth, right? through some means. I mean, using some kind of a method, experimental method. The whole endeavor is to know an objective truth, to gain objective knowledge, right? So to surpass subjectivity. But if neuroscience says that our brains can, or our conscious thoughts cannot transcend subjectivity because they are purely a result of a brain activity, some kind of brain activity, then I mean the whole scientific endeavor can be questioned, whether it's ever achievable or whether there's any knowledge as objective knowledge or objective truth, right? So I think those two, if we extend Ravi Zacharias' critique on philosophical materialism, we can I think we can bring up those two contradictions based on this notion in neuroscience. Like, that is the popular notion that consciousness is purely a result of brain activity, right? Ultimately it can be reduced to the physical the matter, right? So then I think those, it might lead to those two contradictions, as I feel. One is that whether that claim itself, whether you can claim such a statement as objective statement, right? Because then you will be violating the bounds of subjectivity. The other issue is whether that can question the foundations of science or the philosophy of science, right? The whole scientific endeavor, which is geared towards knowing the objective truth or getting closer to the objective truth, right? So that's what I wanted to highlight in this video, and do share your comments and thoughts in the comment section. I'll share Ravi Zacharias' original exchange. Of course, he wasn't talking about neuroscience, but I think we can make a similar argument with respect to neuroscience, and particularly the understanding in neuroscience, the common consensus in neuroscience that consciousness is purely a product of brain, right? Can be some kind of a deterministic function or a stochastic or a non-deterministic function, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is whether it can be reduced to the brain activity, right? Then that leads to subjectivity. Then these contradictions might arise. I feel those contradictions are there, so just share your thoughts on that. And yeah, we'll meet again with a similar video. Thanks for joining in. Thank you.